Good morning. We're sorry we're a little late for the August 18, 2020 Police Board meeting. I'll call the meeting to order. Can we have a roll call?
Commissioner Gardner?
Here.
Commissioner Haskell? Here. Commissioner Price?
Here.
Commissioner Punch? Here. Commissioner Schwerin? Here.
All right. The first item we have is deputization of 2 airport security officers. Are they here? If you would come up. Oh, we have 3? Okay, good. No, 2. 2, yeah. Okay, if you'll raise your right hand and swear along with me. I state your name.
Amber Van.
Do solemnly swear
That
that I am a citizen of the United States,
I am a citizen of the United States.
that I will support the Constitution
That I will support the Constitution
and laws of the United States,
and laws of the United States,
the state of Missouri,
State of Missouri,
and the charter and ordinances of St. Louis County,
and the Charter and ordinances of St. Louis County.
that I will faithfully adhere to the regulations provided
That I will faithfully adhere to the regulations provided
in the written directive system
in the written directive system
as issued by the Chief of Police,
as issued by the Chief of Police.
that I will faithfully demean myself
That I will faithfully demean myself
as a deputized police officer
as a deputized police officer
of the St. Louis County Police.
of the St. Louis County Police.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations, your deputy police officers for the airport.
Thank you.
All right, the first item for discussion is a report on the 2021 budget.
Hi, my name is Joyce Hill, and I am the supervisor of the Fiscal Services Unit. And one of the tasks that we take care of in my office is to prepare the budget for the following year. So we work with the budget office next door, the county budget office, that gives us directions on what our target numbers are. So for 2021, our target was $144,515,000. Now, our 2020 budget was about that much. So they have asked us to try to get our budget for the next year equal to what we have today. Now, that's nothing unusual. That's the only year we've ever really had money, was in 2018. Otherwise, every year we're always trying to, control our costs and stay within a good target. The problem with 2021, the challenge with 2021, is that since then, the collective bargaining agreements for all of the commissioned police officer sergeants, crime lab, and professional staff have had pay increases that were approved by the council. And yet those dollars were not included in our target. They was not added to it. We were told to stay at today's budget amount and include those costs. So our first attempt was to look and see what we have with today, with all the employees who are currently employed, and eliminate or not fill any vacancies. So the cost to keep the employees that we have today and continue the services that we provide right now and pay the increased cost of pay raises is $7 million more than what our target was. So our initial letter to the budget department included an explanation of this, that this would severely adversely affect our ability to provide services. There's no way to do that, to provide these raises and meet that target without eliminating positions. And by that I mean actual employees on the payroll today. There's no vacancies to cut. So the budget office didn't like that letter, and so they responded and said we need actual information so that the council will know what the consequences are of meeting this budget. So the chief has prepared a new letter. I don't know if you've seen it yet or not, but we worked together to spell out the things that will have to be, we won't be able to provide. Because that's ultimately what happens is you cannot, if you don't have the people, you just cannot provide a service. Because if you continue to provide that service, you're just going to pay overtime. So, and that was if we have the pay raises. The other options that, you know, we put that back to the council to renegotiate those pay raises with the collective bargaining FOP, because they are the ultimate authority that sign those contracts and initiate that. So the chief doesn't really have that ability, and so the choice really is between, you know, the cutting positions or giving pay raises. So that's really our real issue. The rest of the budget is the same as most years, includes the operating costs to operate all of the precincts, you know, the vehicles, fuel, insurance, things like that. It's very standard. There's really nothing extra in there. Maybe the shot spotter was an extra $260,000 this year that we had to add. But other than that, it's very straight line, the same as last year, except this challenge we have of how to cover these pay rates. Okay. Do you have any questions?
Thank you. How do the numbers look if the pay raises are not?
If the pay raises do not go through, I think we'll be okay. There's still some cutting that we'll have to, you know, look at, but that's a lot smaller number, you know, than the pay raises amount to about $7 million, you know, but we have some savings in other places, and of course the fringe benefits, we don't know really what they are until the end of the year. But that is like the massive part of our challenge.
So am I understanding you correctly? The change in the CBA is equal to about $7 million. If we keep all of these vacancies open and all of the employees of the department remain employees of the department for the next year.
Yes, the budget was based on everyone who's here today at what their rate is. If we do not, because there's the police one included a new matrix that added an additional cost, but then also they still are covered by a step increase for police officers and sergeants, and then we always shoot with the higher rank, and the civilians were supposed to get a 2% raise on January 1st. So all of those are additional costs that can't be absorbed within that $144 million target. But they would allow for everyone who's here today to have a job.
Have a job at their 2020 salary.
Correct. Yeah. It would depend on where you cut, but, you know, and the police collective bargaining agreement has a furlough outlined in it that you go from the bottom up, right? So those are lower salaries, so there's more of them, right? But it also depends on, we may have some retirements or people leave, but I mean, from lower up, it's about 100 officers.
Okay. 100 officers or employees.
Well, I just use that as a general, like, because, you know, if you take a couple of civilians who make less, then you have to cut more. It's just, it'll take some calculations.
You mentioned that there were other places that include cut, if in fact the salary increase didn't go through, still be over, which is a cut because other places are not as significant.
Right.
But other places.
Well, I don't know that. That's what I'm saying. We would have to work on that to figure out what else we can do without, because that's, I mean, it's not really my call. I can find places, but then the chief and command tech would decide that. Any other questions?
Thank you very much. Okay, the next item is the Teneo study update.
Lieutenant Colonel Doyle is going to present that. I believe he's logged on Zoom.
Can we get Colonel Doyle on the Zoom to speak?
Colonel Doyle on the Zoom to speak, please.
You there?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Hey, good afternoon. So in regards to the Teneo group, they continue to move forward. They have interviewed a number of command level people in the police department, of sergeants, lieutenants, in different units and different bureaus to try to get a broad perspective of the police department. I did have a meeting with them this morning, and over the next couple of weeks, they want to spend a lot of time concentrating on demographic data within the county police department in regards to hiring and practices, discipline practice, sworn versus non-sworn, and so on. You have any questions in specific?
Do we know when they're going to physically be able to come?
So they were trying to get here last week. However, some of these guys work in states to where they come back, they have to quarantine for a couple of weeks. So they delayed coming to St. Louis. However, they still plan on coming, and they looking within the next 2 to 3 weeks to try to make it to town.
Questions? Thank you very much. Your statistics update.
Morning. Just a second here. Try to switch over so you can do a presentation. Okay, all right, sorry about that. Okay, so we're going to present I'm going to present the crime statistics for up until July this year. So looking at just July and also year to date. And just as sort of a reminder for everybody, anyone listening on Zoom, these are the crime stats that our department reports to the state and ultimately the FBI. So that means that it's about 400,000 residents in St. Louis County, the unincorporated areas, and our contract control areas. So there's about 1 million people in all of St. Louis County. So this is bulk of 400,000 of those residents that report crime to us. So looking at the Part 1 crimes here, we have a table with all kinds of numbers on here, and the ones that I sort of wanted to highlight here are highlighted really there. The ag assaults with firearms. So if we scroll over to the right-hand portion of the screen, we have ag assaults at 475 of those for 2020 year to date. That's up 23% compared to last year. So again, I've said this many times, I know, but we're going up incrementally year by year. If you individuals shooting at one another, so a certain percent of those, unfortunately, people are gonna hit each other, and those are gonna cause their homicides. The other rows there near the bottom, the burglary, larceny, motor vehicle theft, so those are property crimes. And those are kind of interesting. If you look at the burglaries and larcenies, those are down for the year. So the burglaries are down 27% for the year, the larcenies are down 13% for the year. I'm going to say that's probably attributed to COVID-related issues because more people are at home, they haven't been at work, so there's more guardianship, so there's no burglaries, there's less larcenies. Motor vehicle theft is a little bit different. That is a continuing trend of having a lot of these motor vehicle thefts, a lot of them from a lot of cars. The vast majority of those, as far as geographically where they come, we have a big chunk of them in South County and then also in North County. So those are the two primary drivers, the general South County area and North County, where those are occurring. So the next slide is going to look at the 5-month comparison for Part 1 crime. So this is sort of just looking back the last 6 months, basically, to March to see crime trends here. So the one thing I wanted to point out here again, we'll go down actually to the burglaries and larcenies. If you look over at July of 2020, so it's the second column from the right there, July of 2020 for burglaries and larcenies, it actually went up a little bit. I think that's probably because society sort of opening back up post-COVID, at least to some degree, and so now you're getting that commensurate sort of rise with these crimes. The motor vehicle thefts, again, have continued on, with 148 in the month of July, so still some pretty big numbers there. We go to our notable events or performance metrics for the year. These are things that we have covered, murders, ag assaults, but also these other important issues that we want to look at, like citizen complaints, internal investigations, use of force, department vehicle accidents, pursuits, and Narcan saves. So as far as the citizen complaints, we are up a little bit, 19 compared to 15. The internal investigations are down 20%, the use of forces are down 13%, and the vehicle accidents are down 11%. Those could be contributing, or the contributing factor to those could be with COVID again. We have less activity, and I'll get to more of that in a minute, but you have less self-initiated activity, less activity in general from the police, and so then you generate less of these sort of negative consequences a lot of times to that police activity. Narcan saves are down a little bit from last year, 30%. I did have a question from the public about that, why they were down. I don't have a real solid answer for that, other than at the end of 2017, the state of Missouri legalized obtaining Narcan from pharmacies. Just anyone can go and obtain it. So that might be driving our numbers down because family members already have Narcan on scene before the police arrive, therefore no need to use it by the police. So looking at the directed calls for service, so again, just a reiteration, this is when a citizen picks up the phone and calls the police to come to their house, to their location. Those are actually rising as you go from the left to the right. So you look at March going to July of 2020, those calls are going up, which is expected as we get to the summer months, as we get into the third quarter of the year. That's usually when we hit our peaks as far as calls for service. Normally this time of year, we still have it this time of year, but people are going back to school. That sort of causes a lot of activity that may generate some calls for service. So this is a normal trend we see with this. I've actually added a slide here that we usually don't see, but just to give you some perspective on this, this is a line chart. So every line represents a precinct that we have, one of our 8 precincts. And at the left on the bottom is January of 2019 going all the way to July of 2020. So we have 18 months here. And it's just showing you the general overall trend of these directed calls for service. And what you notice is first of all, there's one red line above all the others. That is the North County precinct. It just kind of shows you the magnitude of how many calls they do get compared to these other precincts. But then it also shows you as you have the sort of dips in that line, that's the winter months. So your Januaries and Februaries are when the calls go down, less people outside, less activity, and then of course they go up in the summer months. The next slide here is the self-initiated calls for service. So this is where the officers are calling out on different things, whether it be traffic stops, business checks, all sorts of different things. So those are going down. So especially for these busy precincts, the North County precinct, the South County precinct. So you'll notice that as you go from left to right, so when you look at March going to July, those numbers are slightly decreasing. That's because there's only so much time in the day. So as their directed calls for service go up in these busier precincts, their self-initiated goes down too. It's not so dramatic of a relationship when you get into like 10 Wild West County precincts. They here are the traffic stop reports by work unit. So I wanted to touch on a couple other things such as on the slide here. So these show all of our work units that have made traffic stops for the month of July. The other is a combination of, you know, one here, one there, just people who don't usually make traffic stops but have to report it. So the numbers here are not remarkable as far as this is what we usually see as far as a percent breakdown and everything. But what I want to make note of is the fact that actually the total number of traffic stops for the year is down significantly. So we're down 48% in traffic stops for the year. Again, that's partially COVID related. The officers were told not to make traffic stops early in the year to prevent the spread of COVID. So to give you perspective on this, at this time in 2019, we had almost 34,000 traffic stops completed by our officers. We now have 17,000. So we're down quite a bit, significant amount. Kind of tracking along with that are the amount of arrests. So again, it's not on the slide, but the amount of arrests at this time in 2019 was 7,763. We're at 5,399. So again, this overall decrease in self-initiated activity because of COVID, that has decreased these numbers as well. So any questions on the crime stats update? All right, thank you. You're next, right? Or no? I get rid of it.
Yes, promotional policy.
Good morning, everyone. I'll be very brief just to keep updated. We've been working on the promotional policy. We're going through the stakeholders. That'll be going to the FOP in conversation with us and then for legal review. We're planning on that and getting it in front of you. The key feature, I would say, is on the sergeant's test, it's going to be a 70% pass on the written as opposed to the 70th percentile as was last January. So those are some of the features. Everyone's been involved in diversity and inclusion. We're going to make some other tweaks to it also with respect to being able to sit for an exam sooner if you have certain educational degrees. And so those are basically the main features of it. Those we have it next month for you.
Has the Ethical Society of Police been involved in reviewing the policy?
I don't know, so they're not one stakeholder. Well, it would be first Lieutenant Elliott's group would develop it, and then and the chief's been involved the entire time as Lieutenant Webb, and then we also talked about it with the diversity and inclusion unit, and Lieutenant Elliott, other stakeholders have been involved, and certainly your group has supported and supported.
So far in this one, this policy is a little bit different than others that are bringing from the chiefs. So the internal stakeholders, the chief, HR. The next, once we get a good work draft, which we're about there, we'll then send it to county counselor, internal order police, diversity and inclusion, and we can certainly include the ethical society. It's not a problem at all.
We actually got that yesterday. I don't believe motions came up at all, but we certainly include them.
But I think that would be appropriate.
Thank you.
Okay, now, we're going to have a session of anti-bias training.
Sorry, if we take our mask off, it's a little easier to project. My name is Officer Moreland with St. Louis County Police. I'm currently assigned to the St. Louis County Municipal Police Academy, which is a slightly separate entity. This is Officer John Hanson from Clayton Police Department. He's one of our instructors at the academy as well. We were asked to come today to present you guys on the basic overview of our implicit bias training. We're going to give you that. However, this goes into how we're educating our officers and our recruits. Out there. So we're going to give you an overview of everything we're doing along these lines. So we look at this as more of a progression than just simply one program bias or free policing, which is basically implicit bias, a tool that we use. A little slower than I used to. Okay. Good point. All right. So, St. Louis County Municipal Police Academy has been around since about 1985. We kind of split out the city. Since that time, we've become one of the leading educational providers for police officers in the region. We currently, as St. Louis County police officers, we are required by the state to provide 24 hours of continuing education every year to our officers. We average about 50 hours per officer every year. Some of that is different programs that we have, and the majority of that is our in-service program. So there are three basic functions of the academy. The first is the basic training academy, and Officer Hanson address what we're doing with the basic training with our recruits in order to make them better prepared to go out on the police. Continuing education, think of that kind of as if you were at an educational institution, that's our elective program. We'll discuss that briefly for you. And then in-service training is how the St. Louis County Police directs training and education in order to kind of head our officers in the direction that we want them to be going. And we'll discuss that today.
Morning. So with our basic training program, the class that we have currently in the academy right now is our first class that we've kind of modified our approach to how we train. So in the past, it's been we would sit in a classroom sometimes for 8 hours a day, death by PowerPoint, but we're trying to evolve that and make it more where it is more palatable or increases the amount of people that are able to, with different learning styles. Sorry, I'm still. So a lot of times we're trying to do whatever possible is incorporate the recruits in the instruction, not just talking to them. So it really broadens our depth of knowledge. It brings in different perspectives, so they're hearing people other than just themselves. Another thing we're doing to enhance our training is we've doubled the amount of scenario-based training that we give the recruits, which allows us to focus on things and really on current events. So we're doing things such as peer accountability, presenting them with moral and ethical limits, and really broadening the scope of what we're able to do other than just the procedural aspects of the police work. So the next slide, and next few subsequent slides, are going to show you diversity and inclusion, procedural justice. All these elements are really incorporated into every role in the academy. One of my primary blocks is human behavior, and those are directly dealt with as subsections within that block of instruction. So we do de-escalation, like I said, we do a lot of cultural diversity training. We do policing, procedural justice. We have guest speakers come in to give the recruits a broad perspective, and the goal being obviously to leave them as well equipped as possible with a broader knowledge base of people and cultures that they have not previously been exposed.
So obviously we're going to give a 10,000 view of the academy. All of your time to set an appointment and come down and the academy would be more than happy to discuss a lot of these issues with you at any point you're interested. As far as continuing education is concerned, like I said, that is our elective program. That's where we bring in outside speakers from all over the country, and local subject matter experts to teach individual classes, all of things which officers need to be aware of. That is primarily funded through tuition that we took the other departments in the area. They pay a nominal fee for officers, very inexpensive, it's $150 per officer, and that goes into this collective pool that we use to pay these classes we bring in. At one point, we were bringing over 300 classes in a year for officers to attend. Large parts of that are community policing-based classes, very impartial classes, procedural justice classes, CIT classes, et cetera. We try to do the full gamut of the things that our officers are going to need to learn and the officers in the region are going to need to learn. So that is not necessarily just a solely single police program, but our officers are allowed to attend those and do attend on a regular basis. All right. When we think of the way that we're teaching or the philosophy that we're trying to pass on to our officers, make them better able to serve communities. They're really based in community policing for a long time, and that's the model of policing that's out there. There are also more tools that we incorporate into that. Implicit bias, one of those tools, very important policing, become a very significant part of that now, as we incorporate 4 pillars of fair and impartial policing into what we're doing. Procedural justice, intelligence-based policing is important, and as well as constitutional-based policing. And what we like to do is all that in as is important, so that our officers are providing good service for the community. So if you consider the way our in-service program is set up, and in-service is really the majority of the education that our officers are going to get and the training that they're going to get. We have an in-person program. That's 2 times a year. The officers come for 16 hours with a training with us. They go out to the range for 8 hours, and occasionally we have mental health for a state where everybody is required to attend that throughout the year. What we started doing with our in-person program is in 2015, we realized that we needed to increase the amount of fair and impartial policing that we're giving our officers and all of these other programs, right? So what we decided to do is we gave every one of our officers between 2015 and 2017, the Department of Justice supported fair and impartial policing that was basically the program at the time. That's 6 hours that every officer, all 1,000 officers attended during that time, based solely on implicit bias. And that was Lori Friedell's program, and Lori does the godmother of fair and impartial policing. That way. In 2018, we realized we needed to move on from simply implicit bias. Implicit bias is a tool, something that's important for our officers to be aware of, and certainly we incorporate it back into a lot of teaching and a lot of training we're doing now. But we needed to move on. We said there was a large need for de-escalation training. We focused on de-escalation and constitutional-based policing, as well as procedural justice at the time. We spent a lot of effort at that point trying to explain to our officers how all policing work together, and we really saw a pretty good result from that. In 2019, we were lucky enough to get some coffee funds, like $80,000 from coffee, which we used to bring in Randy meetings. Randy meetings is a constitutional scholar, recognized throughout the country. Many agencies, such as Los Angeles Sheriff's Department, use him to help them when they're in issues with things. So we actually brought him in to teach a program called Constitutional and Bias Policing. And every one of our officers attended that 8-hour program during 2019. So the question is, where are we going from here? Because if we just stay with the program that we have right now, we feel like a good program, but we want to continue to give our officers options. And there's really a philosophical reason behind doing that. Because as a young officer, I often did things that were procedurally acceptable, things that I was able to do. For instance, I'd make 100 car stops based on probable cause, and I'd search cars when I had constitutional reasons that I could of that, I would get maybe 5% success rate on finding contraband guns, et cetera, right? But as we progress in policing, we start to realize that just because we can procedurally do something doesn't necessarily mean we should always do that. And that's one of the things we try to build into both our basic training program and our continuing education program, is the understanding in our offices that just being able to do something doesn't necessarily mean it's the right thing to do. And that's the next direction we're trying to head with this. In order to do that, though, we have to give our officers additional skills, because our primary goal is to maintain order in society, right? And if we're going to do that, we have to be able to identify people that are involved in criminal activity and people who are potentially going to be violent. The best tool that we can find out there in the market right now is human behavior pattern recognition. And really what that does is gives our officers tools that are based on science, based on social sciences and medical sciences all combined together to give them these ideas of how they can profile behavior rather than what a person looks like, right, or where a person comes from. We're looking at the behaviors that are indicative of violence, the behaviors that lead to criminal activity, and how we can focus then on those people in the community that are in the community, as opposed to having a general focus and trying to figure it out that 5% that are involved in some kind of criminal activity. So that's where we'd like to go. This is kind of how we look at the program as developed. We had a foundation of fair and impartial policing. We added escalation training, constitutional policing, and human behavior pattern recognition, obviously within there.
Hey, can y'all hear me? Hello, can y'all hear me?
I can hear somebody. All right, so that's the program that we've established at this point with the idea of going forward with that. Being able to finance the human behavior pattern recognition has been tricky. We do not, as part of our in-service program, have any money budgeted that would allow us to bring in outside experts, which would be necessary. We are working with the police foundation to finance a 2-day program where a professional company would come in and teach that program. We think that would be a necessary component for moving forward with this. All right, so the next thing that we're going to talk about here is online program. We also augment our in-person training for in-service through online. We use Virtual Academy. It's an adequate program, as good as anything else that's out there at this time. They provide subject matter experts throughout the country. It's somewhat interactive. And what we do is we try to select the classes that best support what we're teaching in the in-person program as a supplement to that. So where the officers aren't forgetting what we've already learned, and we're kind of reminding them in a different format of the same things. It's an important program as we try out this year. Without this program, we would be struggling to meet even basic 24-hour requirements because of COVID. So obviously online is an important and a cost benefit thing for us. I'm sorry. Thanks for driving us today. Okay, so advocacy and training. We actually are involved in this is awesome.
Okay, so back to slide, the implicit bias foundation started with fair and impartial policing up to human behavior.
Yes, ma'am.
How are I understand officers who have been here since 2015 or 16 have built on this training.
Yes.
What about the new officers who haven't?
Certainly. So that's really where Officer Hensley comes in. The program that he set up to behavioral human behavior hits all of these points of the how many hours do you give in that?
30 hours.
30 hours of our training is devoted specifically to that, but also everything that we do is also incorporated in that. So the role plays and everything else that the officers go on through the patrol block, all these things are being brought up over and over again. So hopefully they come out of the basic training program at a base level, and then our our continuing education program is to move them forward from there. So we're very aware of that everything that we're bringing here, one of the things with the major pattern recognition is that we would expect that our officers in the basic training program would then start getting that training. And there is a training option that's available to do that. We wouldn't feel comfortable training that at the continuing education level just because different officer ability, et cetera. Does that answer your question? Okay. So kind of trying to get back on track with where I was. We're involved in a research project with Tammy Foshell, SIU Edwardsville. She's actually working with the health department. At the health department, she's pretty some kind of investigation into how our fair and impartial program is working and what officers beliefs are and information introduced at this level, and it's focused primarily on officer self-reporting based off of our training. So based on that fair and partial training that they do online every year, she examines the program and what the officers felt they got out of it. Once again, very surface level. We're looking at efficacy in our training. One of the things we're really concerned about is what we're training, accomplishing the goals that we wanted to accomplish. So one of the things we really want to accomplish is that the public is satisfied with our job. So we look at complaints. Our complaints thankfully have always been very low. I think in 2017, I have it right in front of me, but the numbers were in the high 40s, total citizen complaints, out of an average of about 500,000 citizen contacts every year. So of those citizen complaints, we're very seldom, or most contacts, we're very seldom getting complaints from citizens. What we've been able to do over the course of the last 5 years is actually reduce those complaints down to roughly 4 citizen complaints, if I get the number correctly on the top of my head. That's a significant reduction. Statistically speaking, there's significance to that. The other numbers we look at, our racial profiling complaints, those are also always very low. I believe it's 6 over the last 5 years. None in the last 3 years reported to our internal affairs unit. So really being able to tell whether we're impacting that or not because the numbers are so low to begin with is very hard. Another thing that we try to do is we're focusing heavily on our officers' tactics and whether those tactics are being effective or not, because we want to reduce problems with use of force that are inconsistent. One of the things we focused on quite a bit in 2016 was the TASER program. So there was some concern at that time we were becoming over-dependent or using TASER inconsistently. In your package, you'll see a chart that we had that shows total use of force over that 5-year period. It's actually very flat. Statistically speaking, it's very flat. That means that we're using an amount of force. So what we were able to do is reduce the amount of TASER usage that we had. So our goal was to reduce TASER usage. We were able to do that. The flat overall use of force tells me that we're using force at the correct amount. It's just which tools were we using at that time. We managed to reduce our TASER usage in half, from high in the low hundreds to 64 or so TASER usages last year. So we believe we're being, there's some efficacy to our training. Obviously, there's other factors in society and in our officers and the community that affect these things. It's typical social science. We are doing the best that we can, look at what we're doing and see if that's effective or not. So that's really the end of our presentation at this point. Is there anything that we didn't answer for you that we can answer? And as I said earlier on, we welcome the opportunity to have you guys come to the academy, see what we're doing, anytime that you want. Some of you have been there and hopefully like the experience. And we really appreciate the opportunity to sit down and talk to you guys generally about what he wants to do and where he wants to get, where he should go going forward. So if you have no questions, then I'm done.
I have one really quick question. The last item I have is order type, at the bottom it says not relevant, it's other than not relevant.
Okay, so in the packet you have all the statistics that we got from our internal affairs unit. There are types of fall into the categories that we have. I couldn't tell you what those were, but they would be some that doesn't fit those other things that are very common for us. I honestly can't explain to you exactly what each one of those is for.
Can you tell me how many hours of specific implicit bias training do we have?
Okay, so implicit bias, so the fair and impartial program was 6 hours of initial training we gave all of our officers, and it's pretty similar to what you're giving it.
It's probably a little higher, and it's really integrated into a lot of the other blocks too. So with the human behavior pattern recognition, that's a very integral portion that you kind of need the underlying foundation is eliminating bias decision making, focusing really on behavior.
And like we obviously continue in our continuing education program and incorporate that into the education that we're giving our officers on a regular basis. So it's very hard to say, other than that 6-hour program that we presented, exactly how many hours, because almost everything they're teaching now incorporates implicit bias, procedural justice. All of those ideas need to be incorporated in the education and training that we're giving our officers. Thank you. Thank you very much.
All right, Commissioner Crunch, would you like to deal with your
So, thank you. I did not see that actual copies of the letter were made available, nor was posted. Is that?
I have a copy that was sent to me by the chief. Does everybody have a copy?
But it wasn't, I mean, it's on the agenda, but it's not.
Yeah.
It doesn't appear
Why don't we,
acceptable.
can I use something to make copies of this? You know what we can do is go into closed session and come back after closed session to specifically talk.
Whatever you want, whatever you want.
So,
I might go to close, I wasn't clear.
It needs to be posted, this stuff.
yeah,
The material.
I agree.
Okay.
Why don't we go into a session of the contract? And then we can come back and do that afterwards. Okay. Do we have a motion to approve the minutes from July 9th and July 29th? Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Letters and communications, I don't have anything. I don't have any old business. New business, we have a number of contracts. We can go through these in a set. On the first three, the Bi-State Development Agency, the, what number is that group? One numeral? I Group and Training Force USA LLC, KFD Training and Consulting, Professional Law Enforcement Training. There are 1, 2, 3 contracts within. So let's go to there. Do we have a motion to approve those contracts?
So moved.
Second. All in favor? Yes, we can discuss.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead. That's fine.
Are we talking
Yes, that would be in the group, so we can talk about that.
And this is a big, the way this dollar amount is written here, this is not 4,000, this is 4 million. Yeah. I just, I wonder if, and I know we've heard from by state leadership and our meetings, the only thing I'm concerned is we just heard, I'm very, very pleasant and this might be an exceptionally positive thing that in no way warrants any interpretation. I think it's like, I would so much better be in relationship. I'm sorry that that's maybe not emphasized as I should be in discussion right now, but I also know that there's a concern about the effect of our citizens when they are interacting with our metro system in terms of their safety. So there's two levels of concern here, and I don't know if it's appropriate to say we can't approve the contract, but I'm uncomfortable. I don't think I know enough about what this means, and it's such an enormous dollar amount. I just wonder if it's kind of a little better before we approve the contract.
Certainly.
I don't know if it's going to share now or we should discuss in the future.
Lieutenant Schaefer is the one who handles all the contracts, he's probably the best person to speak to you about it.
Should we do it at a future board meeting?
Why do you think we would have that? Are you?
The renewal term for the contract, so it's not like any renewal that automatically renews, it's just renewal terms. Possibly recover our costs for this specific fiscal year with our contract. And this is to that. So that's what your privilege is, the renewal of the contract.
Okay, when you say we recover our costs,
Correct.
so the $4 million number here,
That pays for our staffing and resources, provide services to the body.
and we received that $4 million
Yes, sir.
from who?
From the state.
Oh, from Bi-State.
Correct, yes.
So it netted out zero. It net zero.
Correct, yes, sir.
So it would be, this is one of those areas where it would be wonderful to hear more about this relationship, this contract. I know it's incredibly important to the region. So I'm fine if we move forward with this. I would just ask that we put this on the
Sure.
Just for my own knowledge, when do we start negotiating the next 3-year contract?
That would be 2022. Dedicated to the 3 years. And my data has already signed this contract amendment, so they're happy with this contract.
All right. Any further discussion of the other items? We've had a motion and second. Are we ready to vote? All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? None. We can take the next item, Michelle. I didn't have time to run that through my conflict check. Make sure you don't.
The next contract for review is with Dodson Train Regional Team. And then there are 4 contracts with III for various instructions at the county municipal police.
Okay, it's just that I'm not sure. It's okay, just do that, and then I'll.
Oh. Do I motion to approve the Dodson Training Resources Inc. contract?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
All right, now the next 1, 2, 3, 4 contracts are professional service agreements again with ISII. Do we have a motion on those?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Very good, those are all approved. The Board of Police Commissioners. Oh, it's public forum, I'm sorry, I skipped over that. Do we have people from the public who wish to visit?
The first one will be Kevin Wyndham.
Then proceed with that.
Hello.
Hello. Ready?
Sorry about that. Thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is Kevin Wyndham. I'm one to state publicly a letter that I sent to the board, Chair Price. In the previous letter to the Board of Police Commissioners, I expressed dissatisfaction with the transparency, diversity, equity, and inclusion of St. Louis County's Police Department. Thus far, my concerns have not been addressed. The website is still outdated. Meeting notices nor board meetings are posted on social media, and the commander of the Diversity and Inclusion Unit is destroying an already tattered relationship in the community. I'm calling upon the St. Louis Board of Police Commissioners to recruit and hire a qualified individual to be the commander of the Diversity and Inclusion Unit of the St. Louis County Police Department. The commander of the Diversity and Inclusion Unit, Keith Wildhaber, has publicly admitted that he does not have formal experience nor education in the field of diversity, equity, and inclusion. Wildhaber's expertise is problematic, or lack thereof, however, overshadowed by his berating of Black officers and the Ethical Society of Police, both privately and publicly, including the July 9th Board of Police Commissioners meeting. During the July 9th meeting, Wildhaber delivered a lackluster overview of his work thus far in the Diversity and Inclusion Unit, which exhibited his lack of capacity in the role. On July 31st, Wildhaber took to the media to convey that he had asked to be transferred from the Diversity and Inclusion Unit back to the Patrol Division, but within a week, he returned to media saying that he would remain the commander of the Diversity and Inclusion Unit after a conversation with Chief Barton and Deputy Chief Gregory. This matter is yet another slight to the police-community relationship in St. Louis County, especially minority communities. I look forward to hearing how the board plans to rectify this matter. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. I think there are twofold. One goes to our website. We will be addressing that. The second, because it involves a specific individual, that's a matter that we deal with in closed session, and we will take your comments into consideration. Okay.
Is there another citizen comment? Oh.
Yes, we hear you, yes.
Okay, thank you so much. I wanted to thank the Police Commission for all the work that they have been doing, and I certainly don't envy you on the decisions that you have to deal with in the near future. The reason why I am inquiring today is because at the end of June, the beginning of July, I sent a letter to the Police Commission, and I have not gotten a response in my office at all. And this is the case dealing with Melissa McKinney's. And it was a 4-page letter that we sent. And one, I'd just like to know at what point, if at all, does the commission respond to legislators' inquiries? And if you don't, it would be great if the police commission supported a citizen review board so that individuals who feel that they are injured get some type of justice. And that's my statement
Yes,
today. I would like to get a response.
Yes, my understanding is that that matter is under review by the department at this time, and we have not received feedback.
Okay.
And when we do, then the chief will write you about that.
Okay, you've given us the only information that you're the only entity who has told us that issue is under review. No other entity has told us that, but would that be your update from, as far as I'm concerned, that it's being investigated in the department currently?
Yes, it is investigated in the department. We probably have to use that. But we're looking at it now, and when we get the results for that finding, you'll be informed.
Okay, so
exactly how you'll be informed, and what is confidential in that and not. But that's the status.
okay, well, I do hope that mothers who lose their sons get full accountability. They get full investigatory research done. And as of now, we've had a terrible time trying to get Melissa in front of Wesley Bell, who didn't return her phone call for at least 2.5 months. And I appreciate this time that I've been given. I would like to follow up with Melissa and your board at some point in time if we are not satisfied with the outcome from the police department. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
I'm Dr. Slayson with the Business Management County Police Association. Didn't really plan on speaking today, so I apologize if my thoughts in the word are a little. I have to address the budget picture as well. This is a manufactured issue by the county administration. These are contracts that were passed, negotiated with the county government, passed by the county council, and signed by the county executive either last year or this year, or this was 2 years ago. They knew these increases were coming. They agreed to these increases, and that is the property fund. They knew it was coming. For the county budget office to say your zero sum budget is $144 million is nothing but politics. It's unfortunate they're playing politics with jobs and all, right? But that's just the way it is. They knew that $7 million increase was coming. They know the baseline budget is $151 million and not what our budget was last year because they signed contracts. So, yeah, it costs 100 officers to cut $7 million. Is that necessary? No. Is the money there to increase the budget? Yeah.
So I just kind of want to give you a little more, actually some facts, other than just, the police department has to deal with what county government asks for, what county government requests, but that's not the whole story. And at any time, if anybody wants to discuss these contracts or negotiations, by all means, I'm always available. I'm easy to find by email or phone, so I don't know if anybody has any other questions, but that's kind of the rest of the story with the budget shortfall that is manufactured by the administration. Thank you. All right.
Do you want to go ahead and give your letter now? We're going to go through a couple of things we have to, is that right?
Sure. Do you have my copy so I can? Okay. I gave somebody my copy. And I don't think I'm missing it. I should have copy too.
I have received in our county, there's a harm to some of our residents and much of our community over the last several months, related to local and national and global events that are difficult to control. So I have been working and grappling with that experience of harm that I'm seeing in people and hearing from people, specifically around the issue of race and the way in which our department might be contributing. So this letter that I wrote is an attempt to move beyond protest, to move beyond complaints, to move beyond hurt and pain, which I see in many people, and instead do what I've learned to do in my profession as a physician, and think of solutions. So the letter, I thought, needed to be written rather than a lot of words said, because it does require everyone to grapple with the topic that they have. Because I feel like when all we do is talk about deep, emotionally charged issues like race, we make a personal battle, and we don't have attention to do what we need to do so that we can make that change we all desperately want. So that's why I present this tonight, and I'm going to read it, but it is important to me that the public can see it because it includes what I'm calling a request and a charge to the chief and the president to commit to some real right here, right now change. With all due respect, I don't see the kind of transformation that I know our community is desperate for happening. I see more and more requests to think about this, and there's a lot of things that happen right now that we get to see that harm. The task and the electrical training and probably coordinating more managers at the academy and everything training. We heard about some of that day. There's more details to dig in there. And the diversity and inclusion unit include a civilian with expertise in equity and work as well as diversity and inclusion. It is hard work, and I have learned from experts in the field. I believe as professionals needs to be added to the team. We already heard concerns about transparency. It is difficult to get records, to know what's happening with the board, to get things released and to get notifications. I very much appreciate that there actually is a social media post about these meetings, but it's not being experienced by the public as transparency. Again, harm is occurring in terms of enough. We still need to have solutions. Evaluation is a shifting conversation because now today we're shifting the Center for Policing Equity. I'll leave that alone. And then I'm looking at journalists and language that I feel like loses or missteps or doesn't quite get to the 8 can't wait movement. It doesn't, there's a lot of language in our policy, there's a lot of room, but not, it can't wait for happening. I'm very concerned still about the use of chemical munitions against our citizens who are protesting violently. And finally, I do believe that this board could not do what a citizen review board could do. I'm just trying to reflect back to the chief of the department, what I'm thinking of the community that I'm here to serve, and to do that in a way that's solution-oriented. I ask that this letter be put formally into the minutes for the meeting and that it be released to the public. And I would love to afford the chief the opportunity next month to respond to some of the requests. I recognize there is some tension because of the discourse happening about the budget. I still think that means that we can't do this very good work. So that's all I wanted to share, and I appreciate the time to share my concerns and our community. Thank you so much.
So, I just want to, you're comfortable that the chief has until the next meeting to discuss it. Now, Chief, do you have some of the items in this letter you discuss now?
We do.
Okay.
First item, training after lunch about the need to properly populate the board of managers at the CNCA. I was told that has happened and that is up to date and run correctly. I would inform that. I am going to, is it your understanding, and first off, let me just say that many of the items in here I think are absolutely valuable and I'd like to work on. I really do. Is it your feeling that the procedural justice training needs to be increased at the academy after seeing that presentation, maybe a different focus on it, or what is your plan on that?
I've heard that I did not get a sense of what role it has, and I will now do my own homework and take the good leadership offer to go make a visit and learn more about how procedural justice. I very much appreciate getting that. Okay. The role that it has in that.
Can I ask a question on the training portion of Commissioner Prince's letter? She says that a third of our recruits are black, but only 10% graduate.
Yeah, Mr. Baxton, State Tech.
Oh, okay.
So the current class 201 at the academy, we started with 22 recruits. One is delayed because of medical reasons, so now it's composed of 13 males and 8 females, so 38% female, which is significantly higher in the past. It's 2/3, like 2% black, 14% Hispanic, which is also an enormous improvement over the past. So I think we're making gains. I'm not sure where this data and Dr. Punch's letter comes from, but those are the current steps of the right now.
It's not about the time, it's about the percent that we have to follow.
Okay.
It's the disparity between people who start the process and the actual number of officers that we have, commission them.
Well, then we'll have to address that, ma'am. I understand that. Reference to diversity and inclusion, probably you want to speak to that as well.
Well, I think that as, Director said, that's a topic that's proper in closed session because we need to talk about specific employees, and we have some further information for you there.
Lieutenant Colonel Gregory would like to speak to a potential disciplinary matrix that's on top of page 2.
And one of the issues in your letter, Dr. Hunter, matrix, reschedule. And I'll just say this, that we have, and we're in the progress of working toward that. We see some positive doing that, somewhat at this point. When you start talking about making a matrix, there are a lot of things we have to go through with our current policies now to change in order to make that matrix work for us. If you looked at 300 police departments in that matrix system, you probably don't see about 300 different matrices. So a lot of things we have worked toward and making that work for us. I will let you know now that the shit that we go through to set discipline has worked fine for us. Not saying that it will continue, it will, because it has to this point, but I'm not saying that the matrix will work for us also. Our investigators set the penalty for whatever discipline that may have occurred. That penalty and the report is reviewed by the captain and he gets, from there, it goes to HR, it's reviewed again. The penalty and the report, and the HR comes to me, I review it from me, goes to the chief, and if necessary, based on what the penalty is, it goes to legal for their advice. And from legal, you all have the opportunity to review. So it's for us, and steps to make the system, will take us some while before it. I've been reading the system laws up to this point. It's about 25 procedures that they have on matrix. Again, it's something we see some positive in that, and we'll work toward doing that. Can you talk a little more about the matrix system you're trying to develop? What, how, what? Well, basically, what the matrix system is a system where if you can officer, let's just say he disobeyed orders, okay? That system will say he disobeyed this order, and based on what you've done, here's the penalty that you're going to get for it. It sets the minimum penalty you can get, it sets the maximum, okay? That's how the matrix system works. As I stated in the early stage of it, I know that there are a number of departments that have the matrix system and work for it. And that's what we're trying to get to that point. With our office right now, what we do is we look at past practices. We look at past practices. If last year you disobeyed an order, and you penalize a day of suspension for that, and this year someone else disobeys that same order, something similar, we look at what we've done past and we will set standard based on that. And that's after the investigation done in the report. We look at past practice before we set up. It's not we do an eating, no, and we set penalty on whatever that officer did. There is some study, there is some progress, background based on what we do before we set up. Again, it's reviewed a number of times before that penalty is set. And along with that, if it's a formal complaint against that officer has the opportunity to appeal that penalty that was set against him. Okay, but with matrix, there would be a identified schedule of discipline related to an act, and first offense, second, third. Exactly. And the matrix, as we do also, we deal with any aggravated offenses or issues before setting that penalty. So we deal with that also. But yes, it's just set that time, and there are some issues based in the matrix where it might be difficult to come up with a penalty for that officer.
But it sounds to me like matrix is going to memorialize what we have in place. And if we're looking historically for consistency, then those who are in the BPS will have a general idea of this offense generates this discipline. The matrix simply memorializes it for publication to everybody, correct?
And like I said, even in our early stages with this matrix, yes, it does do that.
Okay.
It does exactly that, yes. So again, you know, it's a lot of positives behind it, and we're looking for it. Again, it's going to take time for us to develop that system.
The point, there should be transparency, reporting officers, enforcement, right? We have transparency to that, yeah.
I'm sorry, what was it called?
Transparency, transparency, reporting officers.
I wouldn't put that on that.
Sorry.
Anyway, there was a question about transparency as far as officers that are using use of force to be publicized to the public. We don't do that. We've never done that. Officer personal information after you use any involved in the use of force. We never saw a purpose in doing that. I don't know what the purpose would be. Information out to the public to follow up on. We publicize all our use of forces. We give a lot of details about our use of forces. We do a very thorough investigation of our use of force when it occurs. But it's handcuffing that requires an arm locking when you put a handcuff on them, that's use of force. All of them to the legal use of force may include these dead force. We do a very thorough investigation of that. When it's a legal use of force, DPS will get involved in it. Prosecuting attorney's office will get involved in it. Our homicide unit will get involved in use of force to justify that use of force. And again, it's a very thorough investigation. To put that information out public, an officer who use of force, I think will be detrimental to our pride. Detrimental for that officer, detrimental to our recruit. If I'm off and I don't get you involved in use of force, the next thing I know is my name publicized all over everywhere about me being involved in use of force. I think it's detrimental for us. Safety for our officers, they're hesitant about using force because they want to be publicized everywhere. We give them to them, we give them to citizens that they serve because they hesitate in using force, because they don't want to see their names spread all over everywhere. And I'm not very computer tech, but I know that probably trace me if they just see my name. We're going to do the training. I think that would be detrimental for our department. I think it would be detrimental for our officers and our citizens if that happens. So for that reason, we have not published our officer's name. In order to do that, there's a lot of things. One thing we have to do is talk to the FOP for our being able to do that. We don't publicize that information for officers involved in the legal or that information is not publicized. So that's one of the reasons that we don't publicize officers' names and reports. All the information you want on your reports and complaints is there for you to get anytime. It's on our website.
I would just add that we do carefully track uses of the words PS does, and if there are issues that are perceived, then an action plan is made, and there have been times in the past that employees have been terminated for improper use of force.
Can I ask a question along those lines? We heard today that in Central, Aston, and I didn't get right to the last precinct down, these are the three areas where there are several minority truck stops when compared to the population. Is that something that would be factored in terms of the use of force, but
So the traffic stop reports, we post to generalized report. And then the committee look at the individual stops, we look at G scores of how they compare to their peers because there's census benchmarking test. It can be somewhat useful, but it's got a lot of problems, and that's what you saw the data sets. That's what the state requires us to do. So when we do the peer benchmarking, we go deeper into these trends. The problem and of all these things, maybe one of the worst places to look at it is because we're very segregated as far as the people that get people travel around the state county, so it can be very difficult to know what we do look at those in depth. As far as we go down to the individual officer, all the way mapping where these officers on interstate, what is their history, all kinds of things.
And those officers get feedback.
If it rises to, it has happened, if it rises to the level. A lot of times what you'll see is, first of all, so we're talking about like 4 stops. Or a lot of times the officers that transfer from one precinct to another, and so they take their staff with them, which can cause abnormalities in how it's done.
And Dr. Bunch, several meetings ago, I think we talked about this briefly, and I kind of explained how I was pretty accountable to be able to talk about those statistics. And I can tell you, and I can show you if you want to see it. Yes, the individual officers get that feedback because I require the captain to get it to me that it happens. So it does happen.
So that, just to clarify, there's feedback that is in the precincts, where I may get feedback not as often as operationally.
We track that every month. So that's on a monthly basis. Those reports and those conversations happen almost in real time.
Next point on transparency about the board meetings, Sergeant Randall would like to speak to that.
Thank you, Chief. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Transparency is in the public wheelhouse. We try to be as transparent as we possibly can, and however, we have to balance transparency with a variety of things, including state of Missouri Sunshine Law, the collective bargaining agreement, as well as anticipated litigation or investigation being ongoing. There was discussion on earlier being issued. It's been updated, I believe it was early 2018, got a complete reinvention. It's going to get another complete reinvention in the very future. We're working with county IT, heavily dependent on their timeline to accomplish that. I'd be happy to visit with anybody who thinks that the website is not user-friendly. However, once you're on the Board of Police Commissioners page, on that page, you see meeting agendas that really have to be posted at least 24 hours in advance, and meeting minutes. The meeting minutes from July have not been posted yet because they were only posted at 12 p.m. As you know, you have to wait the night meeting to approve those minutes. Once they're approved, they're on the website. Additionally, these meetings have been recorded. Those recordings are updated. The goal is at close of that day's business to our YouTube channel. Another link is provided from the same website to the YouTube channel. I cannot think of any more exhausting ways to make this information. Again, these are 2 clicks on our current website. And again, that website is going to be reimagined here in the near future. Dr. Punch, statistics on the website, I think it's a fantastic idea that we need to give the command staff, Lieutenant Dolly's crew, and IT, and see how we can accomplish that. I think that should, we should definitely pursue that, at least as what it looks like on the manpower and on what it takes to actually achieve that in a user-friendly way for people to consume it whenever and wherever they are. The Board of Police policy, you guys run the department. You should take things, update them, and we will get them to your appropriate places on the website, social media, or anywhere else. Are there any questions for me as the public information coordinator for the department?
department. I'm available 24/7. My phone rings at all hours of the day, and I will make time for any inquiries or curiosities that you guys might have.
I need the computer in that. I could not find the mission statement on our website when I looked. Is it?
It certainly should be there. Website wealth of information. I think it's user friendly. I think that people who are familiar with websites are searching things can find it. Mr. Shaw, I'd love to see if we make that more front and center. Now, the discussion has happened in the past where people want more things on homepage. The more things put on the homepage, the more diluted it is. Unless you can actually highlight the important things like either amending or about finding your precinct, most appropriate place for your property. If our department happens to have it, how to contact us, whether that be your professional or the public information office. The website, St. Louis County Police.com, I might have to sit down with some folks if having an issue with that website. I think it's very easy to navigate. I'm not a big tech guy. I can find a wealth of information there. All of our annual reports, all of our non-sensitive policies and procedures, general orders, all of that is right there. People just have to find it.
Would it be possible to have, to prepare a letter to respond to Representative,
Mr. Wyndham?
yeah, Wyndham?
I've spoken to his office a few times, but I'd be happy to continue that dialogue. Maybe there's some kind of disconnect. If there's an area that we can improve, we will.
Yeah, why don't we, if your office would get back to him so that he knows we've heard his concern and responded. And when you talk about our website being updated, what are you thinking about?
Well, this is heavily dependent on St. Louis County's IT department. The website, SEOcorona.com, is kind of the mode that's going to take. Now, even our current site at stlouiscountypolice.com is very user-friendly. It's easy on the eye. It's easy to navigate, especially when you compare it with other comparable law enforcement agencies or government entities. I think that we're kind of the standard here. Take a look at some other government ones. I think you'll find them to be lackluster without any real pertinent valuable information. I think ours has all of that.
And with all due respect, I haven't been able to find the minutes from prior meetings on site, and I've been told I have to request the report. I don't think I can actually reflect that. Like, I'm looking at it right now, and I can't find the minutes for every meeting that I can attend for. So that's what I mean. Now, maybe it's hard, but I know for a fact to get the minutes of the meeting, I have to physically go and correct the report. And that's concerned. I think that's what I'm talking about.
Well, we do not have an entire minutes for police commissioners, but everything we do have is available to have on the election day, should state minutes, agendas, and that site, that page should be divided into two sections. You'll have all of your agendas, and a month after when the minutes are approved, they will be added again. Below that, there are videos, and again, those video release is only a reason happened not only due to the whole pandemic, but to your wishes and the fact that we have members of the media here today.
Got it.
Thanks, Ben. I want to know the board evaluation for the repeat audit or Center for Police Equity. I've not been discussed with them lately, but I'd be more happy to reach out. Probably was they did not have the staffing to do a repeat audit for us, and I believe it was also a time crunch problem. So I'm very happy to reach back out to them and see if maybe on down the road they might consider on that one. On the just Valley is going to address
regarding the, words and the words in the use of force policy.
Yep, so I carefully read what you have on here, and I'll first start out by saying we can definitely improve our policy, and I'll get into the details in a minute. But before I go into that, I do want to respectfully dissent on some of this, which is about the word if. So it basically, for those of you who are not familiar with it, it's talking about using the word if feasible or the phrase if feasible, warning before you see that in force. And I understand your logic on that. You see it as a loophole. I will tell you, though, the super starter this report, we have said if feasible, warning prior to using deadly force. All of these model policies, including Campaign Zero, IACP, go on down to the CILP, they all have that language in there, that if feasible. And there's a very good reason for that, because you endanger citizens or officers like it something happens in front of officer. There's just no time to actually say anything or do something without acting first. So there are legit reasons why you see that in all policies. So just to clarify that, as far as it's not just something that we put in there, it's across the country. There's a section talking about chokeholds, and we do have language in our policies that prohibits them, but I do see very clearly, we're showing you in a minute, in a little wrap up, how it qualifies situations and its overall posture of using force, and I'll get to that, but I understand that. You talk about individual employers' responsibility as reporting. First of all, we would all agree that any excessive force should be reported. Okay, we're not going to say that you wouldn't do that. That, though, in reporting all use force, we do report use force. We're going to strengthen in the policy as far as how to make it more explicit, not just for the officer, but for a citizen reading this, so they would understand very plain language that, oh, yes, they do have to report the incident, which is defined, which is this, and this. So I understand your point with that. So as far as here's the caveat for our restricted and moving vehicles, sort of like if feasible. Again, it's in all policies that in extreme circumstances, not every circumstances, an officer may have to fire a moving vehicle. It could be that it's a terrorist attack where a car is driving into a group of people. A million different scenarios that I couldn't come up with right now, but there are possibilities when that happens, and it's for the protection of citizens and the officers. So, with all that said, the room for improvement here is looking at our policy a bit, and you find de-escalation, several paragraphs in, maybe several pages in, and you find sort of what you're looking for with weighting different places. My recommendation, what we plan on doing, is to make it very clear at the beginning of the policy that the default position is that you de-escalate. Your beginning, the start point is de-escalate, try as best as you can to not use force, and then from there you get into different levels of force. I think, is that kind of getting at what the sentiment of some of what you're saying?
I think that's really everyone's goal.
Yeah, it's just not as explicit as it could be. I will admit that. Or, if you're a citizen reading this, that you say, yeah, a police officer reading it, you say, oh, well, it says right here in 4BC or 4BA. I understand. So, are there any other issues, other questions that you have?
So, how do we move forward on this suggestion? Are you going to revise some of these?
Yeah, we're already looking to revise it. So, again, the structure of it, the core components of it, do fit all, or they're in compliance with all these national standards. That's why every year we get accredited by CALIA, with all these reviews, and it comes out fine. But to make it better, to make it one of the best policies, it needs to be more explicit, and the language needs to be more plain and clear in some ways. That's what I'm suggesting.
Okay.
We're working.
And what's the time frame that you practice on that?
We could probably have the whole done in a couple months, 2 3 months.
think, I think it's more than that.
Dr. Bunch, if you want, after we're finished, we will present you at the next meeting, kind of like a summary of what we talked here in reference to your letter. Last protest, Lieutenant Colonel Baker's going to speak on that. The use of chemical munitions.
I got some more presented to board of PowerPoint presentation. I believe it's selecting, and on that we went through the process in which we use chemical munitions. I think it's very important to point out that our police does not use chemical munitions, fire control agents on peaceful protests. And since we had a renewal of civil disturbance since May the 30th, of all the nights, and I think we're remembering into close to 50 nights of different protests and disturbances and over 30 individual deaths, there has only been 2 times that we have used riot control agents, and that was on May the 30th and May the 31st. And in both times, there were actions being taken toward both groups of police officers and individual police officers. As the protests moved from Ferguson up to the Florissant Police Department, any chemical munitions used in that area by our agency, where it was illegal resin gas, the sea spray, which is debatable whether it's considered a chemical agent or not. It is made from, as everybody is well aware, food process. That being said, when we look at the current situation with the COVID-19 pandemic, we've had the meeting as requested with County Health concerning the effect that are the additional items that need to be considered when we talk about the effect of chemical releasing right into a crowd during a pandemic. And some of the information that we learned from the County Health, we put into better use, I think. Our concern comes down to, we know that chemical munitions, fire control agents, whatever you want to refer to them as, will heighten the possibility of people either contracting or spreading COVID-19. As everybody knows, talking spreads the virus more readily, and riot control agents cause people to it's as simple as that. That being said, when we do, so we took the information from County Health, and Captain Moore and his people are currently working on a better process to include education of people within groups prior to the dissemination of riot control agents. That is currently underway. Second thing, we're talking about a better message to the people involved in the crowd. We already offer, first aid to anybody who's interested in the crowd, and it's usually an amnesty-free program. If somebody comes to us after we've had disturbance and they're suffering from any physical injury or illness, we administer aid them. It's not like they came in and we said it's a free, products. We don't do it that way. We are going to begin conversations with the departments about the offering decontamination stations at protests, but we also have to be very careful about the optics of bringing fire department and fire hoses into public protests that history in the United States and looked on very unfavorably. So that's a mechanism that's going to take some time to work out. Finally, at the end of the day, whenever most of our protests, disturbances, whatever you want to call them, start out relatively calm. None of them start out, it does not seem like we've had any that have started off violent. We have a very good relationship with numerous different groups that are exercising their First Amendment, and there's usually an ongoing conversation between the people on one side of the barricade and the police on the other side of the barricade. There's probably not individuals in the United States that would be equipped at doing that than Captain Moore, who is received national attention on his ability to establish common ground with our protesters. So what we do in those venues is we establish some liaison with the people on the other side of the street who have a different point than we do. It always seems like initially things start out is that the assembly is very small, and we request that this most people will start to discharge. Usually only the more intense individuals who will stay at home. In the event that we decide to control agents into this situation, we give at least in fact as many as 5 warnings to say will be released. When that happens, there's only one way that the protesters can go, and that's over the police officers that are there. Every other venue or avenue of transport away is left open. We don't set up catch stations to keep people running away. They're free to go at any point that they want to go. Now, we have other instances where we use OT or the OLO resident caps to come in individual situations. The answer is yes. That for the OC spray is typically reserved for those situations in which there is a direct assault on a very limited number of officers, possibly just one. The OLO resident caps kind of gives us the ability to individually identify a very small group of people in a crowd who are trying to cause harm. And we did use OLO resident caps for OC spray in more sense on a limited number of individuals. Those individuals also were allowed to depart if they show. If somebody, and we have this on body-worn camera, but if somebody is in distress, we introduce control agents into the situation, whether it be CF or the OC. We provide medical assistance to them and get them to the fire departments, called strike teams, cement teams that are on site to help them. And then we do not handcuff them and take them to jail. They're free to leave as soon as they feel like they're physically able to do so. So I understand that, people in the medical field concerned actually introduced control agents anytime. Okay? And I understand that concern is heightened during a pandemic situation in which, the virus is spread by coughing and stuff like that. We are in the process of renewing or updating our policy regarding the release of control agents to address the concerns of the medical community and of the county government's own Department of Health is working with us on, whether it be through advanced messaging, additional decontamination stations, remains to be seen. So that's kind of where we stand on chemical munitions. There has been a lot of tension on this, as Dr. Punch stated in the letter, a lot of attention on control agents within crowds and the impact in crowds. And so we really look forward to there being a lot of dialogue from a lot of agencies across the country on what will be the best practices with this. I do honestly believe that without control agents, we're left with some very undesirable choices. It is not our intent to use control agents every time we form a line, so to speak, because it's not any more comfortable on police officers than it is on the people on the other side of the street or the other side of the issue. We use those as the last resort, and we really, in the night, we come down to 3 choices. We can either A, let things happen, whether it's burning of a building or the assault on a person, or B, we can use control agents to help disperse the crowd, and they're free to go. Or C, if we're not allowed to rely on control agents, and then we'll have to go back and do hands-on, what we call physical control tactics, and that invariably every time will result in physical injuries requiring medical attention. We know that, and that's our first recourse from our back surgeons to the wall, so to speak, and we're not left with any other options. The recourse that we have is to go to the control agent because they cause the least amount of harm to the people. So that's where we stand on that. But I tasked Kat to work with the liaison with the county Department of Health to continue to find what that's going to look like in the future should we have a return or when we get assistance from the highway patrol, which we frequently do, they have the authority to release their munitions under their same structure of chain of command, so to speak. But we always are in lockstep with them, and they basically follow the same policy that we do.
I appreciate your prior presentations and discourse on this and the work that you've done. But the reason I included it better is I know for certain people who were not taught experienced this way and were hurt. And so again, regardless of what we think, harm has been done, and we must give your comfort to it. So I hear what you're saying, and yet and still, through this peacefully protesting, we're sick and hurt. We have got to grapple with that truth.
You are correct. You are correct. There's no denying collateral damage when you use chemical agents. Anybody that denies it is not the reality. If you and I are in a group somewhere and I'm causing all sorts of problems in your sector, saying the constitutional right, and the action taken, it is almost impossible for you not to suffer some of those consequences, even if you haven't done anything to deserve it. I'm sorry. And keep in mind, that's why you do a lot. It's one of the ideas that, if you're there peaceably and you know that we're going to release chemical agents, you have the ability to walk away needed by us. Thank you. Maybe the alternative to using chemical agents would be to go hands-on, go physical, whether you use soft empty hand, hard empty hand, whatever it takes. We know one thing through law enforcement, that the greatest amount of injuries occur when police officers hands-on with individuals, whether it be on a routine traffic stop, a routine warrant arrest, or a felony car stop. The much that people touch and bad things tend to happen. That's one of the things that we want to, and I don't think anybody would be surprised to understand or to realize that in a crowd of high intentions on both sides of the issue, letting people go hands-on with each other is never a good idea. There's just too many things that people would get injured, the shields and the helmet and the stick, the rock and the bombs. You want to keep the people on the opposite sides of the issue as separated as possible. Thank you.
Dr. Hush referenced your pushing the crisis prevention training. We just recently started classes at the academy and following the crisis intervention class this week. The problem is those classes only hold 50 people, so they're cut down to 25. There's 2 scheduled this year, 5 more next year. It doesn't open back to where 50 or 60 class. To get all those officers trained, it's going to take well over 2 years. But we are starting the process of addressing and getting more training. Carl, can you speak to the utilization of the non-police officers?
As the sergeant officer who presented to you last month is actually in CFE training right now, teaching it. So I spoke to him, and we're going to address the utilization of more soldiers, I guess, if you will, and his insight as to his interaction with the 2 that he does work with, and any insights on increasing that.
Considering the goal that we do give all of our police officers training.
That's the goal. It's just going to take a while. That class that has to be hands-on. We can't teach that first. Actually, I should say.
Wait, back to the social workers. So it's my understanding from last month's presentation that the social work, mental health workers are funded by the state. Is that correct?
That-
For the 20,000, okay. So is our plan to look into more funding on grants, more support?
Well, I think, that first there had to be an assessment of how you need, and then it's how much you can afford, how much you can miss out. I would think the analysis is
Making more likely okay.
Yes, in reference to that question, being able to recognize officers right now, we're increasingly use lethal or deadly force. To be honest with you, we have no way of tracking that. What we do have is what I think you report from is the IA Pro system, where the IA Pro will recognize officers who have a pattern of using force, pattern of accidents, things like that. We have a certain kind of complaints file. Once that threshold is set, we recognize that officer. We'll step in, talk with him. First of all, we make sure that the complaints against him are justified. He might have 5, 6 use of forces, but once the IA was sent to him, they were all justified. So that's officer probably going to be guys. Or when we look at the program, IA Pro, that recognize an officer with certain offenses, and we take actions against it, and it's work false. As a matter of fact, we actually terminated an officer based on the information we got from him, based on what we have in IA Pro. We had a pattern, we dealt with it, we investigated it, and it resulted in termination for him. I'm thinking that that's probably what we do is you mentioned last time the officer in Minneapolis, it had something like 18 complaints against him. And for that, I mean, we've never taken off the street. We never get to that point with us, based on what we have with the IA Pro. We help with that. It won't get to that point first at all, because the threshold is out over us. Once we recognize that, we'll deal with that situation. But again, to say that it's going to keep him from using legal force down the road, we can't say that. There's nothing that we can do to prevent that. He may have 10 use of forces and they're all justified. And then down the road, a year later, he used legal force. There was no way that we could judge those 10 use of forces that he was going to use legal force a year later. But we don't have that. We have a system that will help us get in trouble with officers off the street when we recognize.
I just wanted to clarify one thing, I really appreciate y'all are addressing me, but I want everyone to understand that I'm sitting here as a representative of every type of road with my reflection for having a Department of Justice, the Ferguson Commission, the homegrown STL report, as well as the STL BPC who presented, as well as consultation with members of the department. So this is, I just want to I'm not smart enough to think of all these concerns. I have to digest a great deal of writings and reflections and studies and reports to be able to then have these things to say.
Well, first regular letter, I called you and told you that you were bringing valid issues and that we can talk about them. Actually, I would like to hear more discussion about our program within officers who have used force. The routine what a deputy chief just spoke about. And we want to do today, I'd like to get further. What do we do to make sure that we identify officers who are improperly using force?
You're asking for more in-depth information on the guidance program and how that goes down into the field?
Yes, and how that actually works. I don't need to hear it today,
but I would like to have an idea about that.
I would just like to say, thank you for your letter all from all the ways you took it from. I believe the very police department, but there's always an improvement, and these things that we talked about today, we refer to, I didn't understand this, but I think the combined wisdom of people that are in this room with that board really makes some great changes moving forward, and I appreciate the opportunity.
All right, is there anything more we want to talk about?
May I say one thing, Jeff?
Sure.
I neglected to mention this last meeting, but I'd like to say that, the 2020, law enforcement advanced data, I think it's a leading scholarship program for 2020 for 12 people who competed all over the United States. And I want to mention that our Lieutenant Colby Dolly was selected all those candidates to be a lead scholar and do scholarly research for the police. So congratulations.
Congratulations, Governor, for all of us. All right, now, the Board of Police Commissioners may vote to go into session for review of claims lawsuits involving the police department, section 610-0211 RSL, and section 114-0201 SLCRO. Discussion of employee and personnel matters, section 610-0213 and 13 RSL, and sections 114-0203 and 13 SLCRO, and date on union negotiations. Section 610-0219 RSL and section 114-0209 SLCRO, and specifications for competitive bidding. Section 610-021L or 11 RSL and section 114-02011 SLCRO. Is there a motion to go into closed session?
So moved.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, we will now go into closed session and return at the completion